Hello, awesome people. I hope you are having an amazing day today. Today, I wanted to take a look at my top 10 Godzilla films of all time, going all the way back to the original one in the 50s and so forth. Previously, for this channel, I have done my top videos for my three favorite genres that I cover: science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And I did the movies too. I also do a lot of reviews from books and video games and other written media, like in addition to novels, I'll do novellas or short stories or even some poems here and there too, and such. And I typically will post 3 of those a week. And I thought it would be fun for me to do top 10s of various genres that I covered too, from various eras. And I had on my classic sci-fi genre, Godzilla, the original movie, hitting very high. It also hit very high in the horror stuff from this decade too, because I consider it to be a classic of both sci-fi and horror, and so that's why I hit 2 of my lists and so forth. And I thought it would be fun for you to actually give me my top 10 Godzilla movies overall, irrespective of decade or genre or who makes them. I thought it would be fun for me to do my little deep dive into this channel on the Friday that I spend on movies and such. Alright, so let's get started with number 10. This is from 1964, and this is Mothra vs. Godzilla. This is the 4th Godzilla film. The first one really put them on a map in a major way. The second one really didn't do as well as they were thinking it. The third one sort of reinvigorated him 7 years later, and so forth. And this is the next one after that one that sort of reinvigorated him after 7 years and such. I really like some of the messages of Mothra versus Godzilla, the anti-environment. It's saying that people that are taking advantage of our environment for corporate reasons should be questioned, and so forth. I think that's a great message, even resounds today, and so forth. Them trying to commercialize everything, even stuff, and so forth. No spoilers, as a reminder. But I definitely feel in the environment and so forth, it feels very modern, and so forth. And the original Godzilla is sort of a what's happening in Japan past of their atomic horror after the bomb just a few years later in Nagasaki and Hiroshima in the first Godzilla. And here it's more corporate greed that's taken over, and its lack of care of the environment in doing so that are the heart of this one. And I really like that message. I think it's a great step. I think this is the best of those messages. There are some other ones too, like the slug monster, right, or the plant monster in a later version that also has this message. But I think this one does the best with it and such. And so for those reasons, this feels a little timeless to me. Number 10, Mothra vs. Godzilla. For you folks, 1964. All right, next up is the next film, number 9 in our sets, and the next film actually came out, and this is 1964 too. Ghidorah's the three-headed monster. This adds the big giant antagonist of Ghidorah to the world. He will become the evil antagonist, like the Moriarty to the homes of Godzilla and such. Basically, starting around Godzilla versus Mothra, and this one, Godzilla moves to fighting against humanity, being our worst enemy, to fighting for humanity, although we don't like it, and that sort of a thing. And that begins to happen. It's really set steady with the arrival of Ghidorah and such. Ghidorah is a great, strong foe. He does some great stuff. There are times, when they are pretty evenly matched, and you can see it in the battles and stuff too. In this entrance of Ghidorah, absolute classic to my mind, and so forth. And so for those reasons, it's hitting number 9 on my list. That's number 9, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster from 1964 too. All right, now the next one is number 8, and this is Godzilla Final Wars. From 2004. This is in the Millennium era of Godzilla and such. Each of the movies in the Millennium era had a different setup and criteria, if you will. So they each had these different things that are going on and are doing different backgrounds and so forth. In this one, it's basically the so long and farewell to the era, and I think they do it just such great justice. And I think you'll definitely agree if you've seen it. It's got great fight scenes, great stuff's happening, and so forth. All huge stuff's happening. Again, spoilers, I can't tell you the plot, but the plot's great, team. Love it lots. And so I think that's a great ending to the Millennium Era, and that is the Godzilla Final Wars in 2014 for you folks. And that was the last of the films for a while until we got to the more modern era. But I think they did a good job going out on a good scene. All right, so number 7 is, like I said, 10 years later. This is Godzilla's 2014s after the Final Wars ended the Millennium Era. We didn't have a Godzilla film for 10 years. Actually, pretty rare when you think about it, considering how many films we've had since then. And this is the first film of the legendary universe and Monsterverse. Such. Love it lots. I love its introduction. I love its views of Godzilla. Now, one of the critiques of this by fans and critics alike is that the Godzilla here is pretty light at times, but I think he does a great job. I think he doesn't over-spice the Godzilla pudding. And I think that's actually to his credit. You know, the Godzilla scenes in here typically are more about a calm, like seeing what his things are doing, or seeing the people around him react to him, stuff like that. I think that's a great thing. I think that was an incredibly strong choice. He could have easily have aired into the side of, I'm going to give you tons of Godzilla in this Godzilla film to reintroduce the character. And so forth. Also, I think one of the major critiques is that the people that are on the center scene just aren't people that you care about, and so forth. And I hear that. I do. But I just don't agree with it, because the people in the center stage that are not the Godzilla have never been the feature of a Godzilla film. I've seen them, right? They aren't and such. I've seen every Godzilla. They are not the feature. The Godzillas, the fights, all that stuff. And I love that. I also love the introductions of the big giant kaiju-like characters for him to fight and so forth too. And there are new characters that were added to love a lot and so forth. All right, there you are. Now, number 6, the last one before the top 5 proper, is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla from 1974. This also introduces, I think, one of his great antagonists, Mechagodzilla, who is initially created to be a version of him. We'll see different versions of Mechagodzilla in other iterations of this series, like one that's his bones that are reanimating, or one that's a living metal, that sort of a thing. But I think that the original version of him, with the aliens and such subplot, I think it definitely works incredibly well. And that's why this is the only Mechagodzilla film hitting it all the way up here at the number 6 spot for you folks. All right, so number 5, and the top 5 proper is Godzilla vs. Kong from 2021. And so forth. I think that many people loved the first film and turned out for it in the Monsterverse, but the second film wasn't as beloved, and so forth. Although I think it's great stuff. I enjoy it lots, but it's more than a lot of detractors do. But this one sort of put it back in the needle, if you will. It sort of stuck the landing in a big way. And such, and so that's why it's hitting my number 5. It's just fun. If you want to watch a film for fun, not that it's got a bunch of movie meanings, like the original Godzilla or Mothra vs. Godzilla that we talked about before, but you just want a fun film that you're going to enjoy from beginning to end. Love it lots. Also, no spoilers, but I like the results of these fights too. They make sense for the plot and the characters that have been portrayed and added here too. So for those reasons, it's an absolute classic in the genres to my mind. And that's why it's hitting the number 1 for you folks. And number 4 is 2016's Shin Godzilla. This is an absolute classic prior to another one that would get printed later. This was actually the biggest Godzilla film fiscally released by Toho. This was a big giant, and it was a great love letter It really got him back to basics from he's going to be the great avatar of the environment and the world and so forth. And to help us reestablish the greatness, they just got back to form and said, no, this is Godzilla. Remember him from the first film? Well, he's back. And you are going to like him. I also love the beleagueredness of how much he impacts the Japanese and such. And because this is the first time Godzilla had appeared and such. So this isn't, after some previous Godzilla films where they'd already built up stuff, and you can see the paralysis of the Japanese bureaucracy, stuff like that. I love it lots for those reasons. So that's number 4, Shin Godzilla for you folks. All right, so number 3 is going to be King Kong versus Godzilla from 1962. This is the third one that came 7 years after the hated sequel that really just didn't well in theaters at all and so forth. It reinvigorated the franchise in a major way, kind of like the previous one, Godzilla versus Kong, after its not sequel. That was a little more serious and such. People didn't take really well in theaters and show up at support and love, just exactly the same things too. So this is, again, like the previous one, this is just a pure fun joy. But let me give you a little bit of context. When I was a kid, I was recording fun things on the local channels on Saturdays on a this is before DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff like that. I was just recording on a VHS tape, and I heard that there was going to be this film coming out called King Kong versus Godzilla from the 60s. I thought, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm going to record it and then watch it. And I watched it. That was my first King Kong film. And it was awesome. Loved it lots. It was an absolute treasure from the beginning to the end. I watched it a few times here and there. Every time I've gone back and reloved it. It was my first Godzilla and King Kong films. Loved it lots as a kid. And watched it a few times here and there and such. So that's one of the reasons why. It's just a great film. Again, it doesn't have a message. It's just a fun film. But if that's what you want, if you just want a fun film that's really going to push the combat scenes and such to their maximum conclusion, then that is King Kong versus Godzilla from 62. And now my top 2. Now number 2. Now this one might be a little controversial because it's not my number 1. Because many people probably have this now at their top because since it was the recent release at their top. I've seen a lot of Godzilla films that put this as the number 1, but I just can't do it. And that's Godzilla Minus One. It's hitting 2. I'm sorry that Godzilla Minus One isn't hitting 1 because it's got 1 in the title for you Synergy fans and so forth. But I can't overestimate it, right? I watched this in theaters. Absolute classic. Loved it so much. No spoilers. But the plot lines, the characters, this is the best characters, the best world building, the best plot lines that any Godzilla film has ever had. By going back and doing a sort of a prequel prior to Godzilla being made, kind of like without being out there, to kind of like Shin Godzilla. They aren't able to hold themselves to the previous stuff. They can just write the film they want to write, and wow, did they win. A lot of people have talked about how awesome it was that this is the first Godzilla film to even be nominated for a special effects Oscar or other Oscars like actors, let alone to win it and so forth. And it deserved it. I saw it in the films, in the theaters. It was totally great stuff. Loved it lots and such. If you haven't seen it, I don't know why you're watching this. Stop it. Go watch and then come back to my number 1, which has to be my number 1. And that is, of course, 1954 Godzilla for you folks. It has to be there. It's the classic of classics. It put Godzilla on the map in a major way. It put the giant monster films on the map in a major way, kaiju films, Japanese cinema, and so forth, and really put it on the film maps in some major, huge ways and such. You can't not have Godzilla as your number 1 film of a Godzilla list, and so forth to my minds. Godzilla Minus One might be hitting films. I think it's more recency bias in the fact that it was such a great film that we weren't expecting, and so it had great character developments and so forth. But this is the one that really put it on the map in a major way, and so forth. So go see Godzilla too, if you haven't seen it in a while. So those are my top 10 films. Let me go over them really briefly. 1964's Mothra versus Godzilla. Number 9, Godzilla Ghidorah versus, the three-headed monster from 64 too. Number 8 is Godzilla Final War from 2004. Number 7 is Godzilla 2014. In the MonsterVerse, number 6 is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from '74. Number 5 is Godzilla vs. Kong from 2021. Number 4 is Shin Godzilla from 2016. Number 3 is King Kong vs. Godzilla from '62. Godzilla -1 is number 2, and number 1 is Godzilla from '54 for you folks. All right, so there you are. And do you like Godzilla as much as I do? Have you seen all the series? And so would you agree or disagree with these as your top 10? Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm not a trained critic. I just tell you this is opinion. If you're a fan, your opinion is just as valid as mine is, right? So I'd love to know what yours is. I'd love to know lots. I think that'd be fun stuff for you folks to share yours with me too. And if you are a trained critic, right, then you are more valid than me. That's not a problem. I don't mind. And so let me know what your thoughts are too. These top 10s. Remember that these are just my top 10s of my personal ones. They aren't necessarily the best made top 10s. They're just ones I like, right, that I like seeing and such. But so your mileage may vary, and that's not a problem at all. These are just my films. If you like this video and want to see more, hit the subscribe button, the like button, the bell icon if you're feeling frisky, because again, I have all these videos that I do of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And then tomorrow, Serial Saturday, I'm going to be doing the Radar Men from the Moon from the early 50s. It was a Republic serial in the movies. So if you like some of those older things, you probably will want to check that out too, and such. I think that's great stuff. All right, and also next week I'm going to be ranking my King Kong films, because I think that's definitely a great genre to do too. So I'm going to be doing that next week. So if you like this one and you want to stick with the giant monsters, you can. Right, and again, hit that subscribe button. The name of my channel is The Worst Thing About New Books. It's a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, right? In this case, the older films that have definitely been classics to our minds, and so forth. We have forgotten a lot of them and our influences on us in some places, so I like going back to some of these and showing that, and that's where the passion of this channel comes from, and entitled to. And then finally, I just want to thank you so very, very much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my videos, right? Because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spend this time with me, that's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it so very, very much. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.